The fluorescent lights hum just slightly above the narrow corridor of the Ravenwood Strategic Command Center, a place that technically does not exist. Doors here unlock only with biometrics that never appear in the Department of Defense database. Every person inside has a clearance level the public believes is fictional. Lieutenant Marcus Briggs stands with his arms crossed, boots planted hard on the polished floor, surrounded by a cluster of junior officers who hang on every word he spits. He has that smirk men earn not through competence, but through getting away with being loud. Then the door at the end of the hall slides open. A woman steps through. Black tactical uniform, no insignia, no rank patch. Dark hair tied back. A face calm enough to make anyone uneasy. She moves like someone who is used to silence, not because she is shy, but because silence keeps people alive. Agent Nova Hale. But nobody here knows that name. Not yet. The officer beside Briggs whispers, "Who's she? Logistics? Maybe cyber support?" Briggs snorts. Support? She's 5'0" and weighs maybe $120. If she sneezes, someone needs to hold her upright. A few of the officers laugh. It's the kind of laugh people give when they aren't sure they're allowed to laugh, but do it anyway. Nova stops exactly where Briggs blocks the hallway. "Excuse me," she says simply. Briggs doesn't move. "This area is for personnel with real clearance." "Then you should step aside," she replies. More laughter behind him. He raises an eyebrow. "Oh, we've got confidence. Cute. What's your rank, sweetheart? Field intern, coffee technician. You lost?" Nova's gaze doesn't change. Her breathing doesn't change. But something colder than anger flickers in her eyes. Something that makes two officers instinctively stand straighter. "I don't answer to you," she says. Briggs leans forward, lowering his voice but broadening the humiliation. "Out here, you answer to whoever's in charge of the corridor. And right now, that's me." Nova tilts her head slightly, as if studying whether she should dignify the conversation at all. A young corporal steps forward nervously. "Sir, she has a black access tag. We're not supposed to question—" "Corporal," Briggs snaps. "If I want advice, I'll ask the wall." The corporal falls silent. Nova's voice stays even. "Lieutenant Briggs, you're obstructing an operation you don't have the clearance to know exists." "Oh, is that so?" He laughs. "Tell you what, Princess, since you're so mysterious, why don't you tell us what operation is going on right now?" She looks at him, long and unblinking. Then, "No." The officers laugh again, too loudly now, trying to impress Briggs. Briggs turns to them, smug. "See? Nothing. She's nobody." Then, loud enough for the whole corridor. "If she wants to be on my mat, she proves herself. Otherwise, out." Nova doesn't move, but everyone else does, because the corridor goes suddenly, unnaturally quiet. Footsteps echo sharply from behind them, rhythmic, heavy, familiar. Secret Service agents step into view. Dark suits, earpieces, hands ready at their jackets. And then, President Carter Sloan appears between them. The President of the United States. In a secured hallway he should never need to be in. Surrounded by men who look shocked to be escorting him there. Briggs freezes. Everyone does. President Sloan's gaze sweeps the corridor with the practiced weight of a man who sees through people, not at them. Then he sees Nova, and the shift is immediate. He stops walking. He straightens. And in front of every single person, the president places his hand to his brow in a crisp, unmistakable salute. "Agent Hale," he says, voice reverent and relieved. "Thank you for coming on such short notice." The officers let out a collective gasp. Briggs turns pale. Nova nods once, calm as ever. "Mr. President." The president gestures the Secret Service aside and steps forward. "Everyone here owes their lives to this woman. If she needs anything, you give it to her before she asks." No one moves. No one breathes. Briggs's entire body locks. That's the moment he realizes he didn't mock a nobody. He mocked the most lethal, most classified, most indispensable operative the country has. And now, every admiral, every general, every decision maker in the war room is waiting for her. The president's salute still hangs in the air when Agent Nova Hale steps past Lieutenant Briggs, who finally scrambles out of her way. He doesn't step aside so much as stumble backward, the confidence drained from him, like someone unplugged the arrogance keeping him upright. Nova doesn't look at him. She doesn't need to. She walks with a precision that makes the Secret Service agents tense, not because she's a threat, but because they know exactly how dangerous she could be if she wanted to. President Sloan walks beside her. That alone is enough to terrify every uniform in the corridor. Director Keene is waiting inside the war room, Sloan says quietly. He insisted on briefing you himself. Nova nods. I assumed as much. I apologize for the reception, he adds, glancing back towards the corridor where Briggs stands rigid, sweating. Some men mistake volume for authority. Not my concern, Nova answers, but the president stops walking. Maybe it should be, he says softly. Nova turns to him, but his expression gives nothing away. He studies faces the way she studies blueprints, searching for pressure points, faults, hidden dangers. It's what made him win an election everyone swore he would lose. Agent Hale, President Sloan murmurs, after this briefing, your identity won't stay in the shadows for long. Someone in this building leaked your return. Someone wants you exposed. Nova's jaw clenches almost imperceptibly. That narrows the list. It does, he agrees, but not nearly enough. They reach the reinforced titanium double doors of the war room. 2 Marines stand guard. As soon as they see Nova, both straighten and offer the kind of salute usually reserved for medals that come with folded flags. She returns neither salute nor acknowledgement. Not out of disrespect, but because Nova Hale has no rank to salute with, and no identity to attach to any gesture. Her entire existence is an exception to protocol. The doors open with a hydraulic sigh. Inside, the Ravenwood War Room is already full. Admirals, generals, intelligence directors, analysts, cyber division chiefs, counter-terror advisors. The highest concentration of authority in the United States government sits at a table beneath a ceiling of screens broadcasting encrypted feeds, global threat matrices, satellite relays, and a countdown clock that none of the officers recognize. All heads turn the moment Nova enters, and then the murmurs stop. Silence takes the room. Not respectful silence, but reverent silence. Director Keene, a man with silver hair and a scar on his temple from a mission that never happened, rises from his chair. Agent Hale, he says, nodding deeply. We're grateful you came. Nova scans the room, every detail noted, every heartbeat, every shift in posture, every flicker of recognition. She sees who knows her, who fears her, and who wishes she hadn't walked through that door. She sits without waiting for an invitation. Keene gestures to the main screen. The countdown clock flashes, 13:27:19, and ticking downward. We are here, he begins, because of Operation Winterhold. The room reacts, quietly, tensely. Several officers exchange glances, others stiffen. Briggs, who had attempted to sneak in and stand near the back wall, looks like a man who would rather dissolve into the floor. Keene continues. 2 weeks ago, a covert cell intercepted satellite communications, indicating that an unknown hostile group acquired a classified asset. Not stolen, acquired. They didn't break through our systems. They walked around them. They used clearance codes that should not exist. He pauses. Codes that belong to a dead Black Ops operative. Nova's expression doesn't change, but internally, the temperature drops 5 degrees. Keene switches the screen to a blurred figure, pacing inside a bunker. Voice distorted. Identity hidden. The words on the screen transcript read, "We have what you built. We know who she is. And when the clock hits 0, the world will know too." Nova leans back slightly, eyes narrowing. When was this received? 48 hours ago, Keen says. And the codes used to authenticate the message match one person. Everyone in the room looks at her. Everyone. Nova says nothing. President Sloan answers for her. Agent Hale's identity was erased 8 years ago after the Caracas breach. Whoever sent this message should not know she exists, let alone know enough to target her. Keen points to the ticking clock. If the countdown reaches 0, the asset they've acquired, the one your old unit created, will be activated, and millions of lives will be endangered. Nova's voice is steady, low, almost too quiet. Who else knows? Keen looks around the room. Everyone in this room. And the leak came from here. A murmur ripples across the table. President Sloan steps forward. Agent Hale, we need you to find the cell, recover the asset, identify the traitor, and stop this countdown. You are the only operative who understands the Winterhold prototype and the only one the enemy is clearly afraid of. Nova Hale folds her hands. Understood. But in her eyes, something sharper ignites. Not fear, not anger. Recognition. The final name she hoped never to hear again is coming. The enemy cell belongs to someone who once stood beside her in the shadows, and someone who should have died with the rest of her unit. The war room feels smaller now, not because of the people inside it, but because of the truth tightening around everyone's throat. A countdown that no one can decipher. A threat that isn't fully understood. And a message that calls out one person by name. One name the world was never supposed to hear again. Agent Nova Hale sits perfectly still, as if her body were carved from the same reinforced steel as the walls. But stillness isn't silence. Stillness, for her, is calculation. She watches the frozen frame of the masked figure on the display. The pacing. The posture. The slight tilt of the head. These are tells. The kind she was trained to read long before she learned to read written language at all. Director Keen clears his throat. There's a second file, he says. Audio only. We isolated a short section that wasn't masked. Nova nods once. Play it. Keen gestures to the technician, who taps a key. The room fills with a faint, distorted sound. Static at first, then a voice that slips through like a thread pulled through fabric. Just 4 words. Soft, steady, familiar. Did you miss me? It's enough. Nova's eyes close for a fraction of a second. Just a fraction. President Sloan watches her carefully. Agent Hale, do you recognize the voice? She opens her eyes again, and the air seems to cool around her. Yes. Keen leans forward. Who is it? Nova answers with a calmness that does not match the severity of what she says. Callum Vance. A ripple of tension moves through the room. Some officers whisper. Others sit straighter. A few blink as if the name were a ghost they expected never to meet again. Lieutenant Briggs, still near the wall, frowns. Who exactly is Callum Vance? Nova turns her head toward him, not to acknowledge him, but to correct a mistake in the room's understanding. Callum Vance was part of my unit. Was? Briggs asks. President Sloan answers before Nova can. He was presumed lost 8 years ago, during the Caracas breach. Keen adds, if he's alive, we have a problem. A very significant one. Nova's eyes stay on the recording. He wasn't just part of my unit, she clarifies. He was its architect. He understood every protocol, every off-grid route, every fallback pattern. Winterhold was his design. He created the prototype with his own hands. Briggs shifts uncomfortably. Then how did he end up on the other side? He was one of ours. Nova finally looks at him, directly, sharply, but with the restraint of someone who chooses her words the way surgeons choose instruments. People don't switch sides in a single moment, she says. It happens one compromise at a time. The room grows quiet again. Keen taps the countdown timer. We have less than 13 hours. If Vance is in control of Winterhold's prototype, he's planning something significant. We need to anticipate his next move. Nova stands. It's not dramatic. She doesn't rise fast or push back her chair. She simply stands with the kind of deliberate certainty that makes everyone else correct their posture automatically. "Director Keene," she says, "I'll need access to the archived Caracas files." The versions that were never entered into digital storage. The entire room looks startled, even Keene. "How do you know those exist?" he asks. "Because I wrote the incident logs while the dust was still in the air," Nova replies. Sloane lets out a slow breath. "Agent Hale, I understand that returning to that operation is difficult." "Necessary," she corrects. He nods. Keene lifts a secure tablet and slides it across the table. "All physical archives are in Vault 3. You'll have unrestricted access." Nova takes the tablet. Her fingers hover over the screen, not touching it yet. Keene adds, "There's one more thing you should know. The message that came in, it wasn't sent to Ravenwood." Nova looks up. "Then who was it sent to?" Keene hesitates. "The White House." President Sloane folds his arms. "Callum wanted me to receive it directly. He wanted me to know her name. That means his target isn't just the prototype." Nova processes that. Slowly. "Then he's not trying to destroy Winterhold," she says quietly. "He's trying to expose it." Sloane steps closer. "Agent Hale, do you believe he intends to reveal the program to the public?" Her answer is immediate and steady. "No, he intends to reveal the people involved." The implication spreads across the room like cold air. Keene turns to the team. "We move everything to secure level Black. No digital correspondence. No remote access. Hard line communication only." Nova looks at the frozen image of the masked figure one last time. Callum Vance. A man she trained with. A man she trusted once. A man she watched vanish into fire and debris. A man who was never supposed to walk back into the world. She pockets the tablet and walks towards the exit. Sloane calls after her. "Agent Hale, where are you going?" "To the vault," she says without turning. "To remember what everyone else forgot." Ravenwood's lower levels feel nothing like the polished command floors above. Down here, the hallways are narrow, the lights dimmer, the air colder. Every footstep echoes with a hollow quality, as if the concrete itself remembers too much and would rather forget. Agent Nova Hale moves through the corridor with surgical focus, the secure tablet under her arm. 2 guards flank the reinforced doorway ahead. Vault 3. The archive that holds the files no one is supposed to access, even inside a place built on secrets. One of the guards steps forward. "Authorization?" Nova holds her wrist up to the scanner. The tablet pings softly. Her clearance code flashes in white. "Non-indexed access. Black Ops Division." The guard stiffens. That code is older than he is. "Ma'am," he says, stepping aside. "Vault is open." The door releases with a heavy clang. The moment it cracks, a wave of cool, dry air rolls out. Air recycled so many times that it's lost any scent of the outside world. Nova enters alone. The vault lights flicker on automatically, row by row, revealing metal shelves filled with sealed boxes, data wafers, coded binders, and analog devices preserved for reasons only a handful of people understand. Ravenwood's most off-grid history lies here, unindexed, unreachable, untouchable. Except for her. She walks straight to a shelf labeled Caracas, Observed Incidents. The lettering is hand-painted. She knows the handwriting, hers. Nova removes a small metal case and sets it on a steel table. The latch opens with a soft click. Inside are 3 objects: a worn notebook, a pair of encrypted microdrives, and a folded map stained with something that looks like dust but isn't. She opens the notebook first. Her handwriting is controlled, sharp, compressed into tiny lines, notes written in the field during a mission that nearly erased her entire unit. Caracas Breach, Day 1. Vance created failsafe routes through the lower tunnels. If he survived, he would retreat through Route K. Route K was never confirmed destroyed. She exhales slowly. The official report claimed the tunnels collapsed, that everyone still inside was lost. But the unofficial version, the version she wrote with shaking hands after pulling herself out of the smoke, tells a different story. She flips the page. Vance is missing. Unconfirmed status. Prototype fragments not recovered. Nova closes the notebook. The room feels colder now. She inserts one of the microdrives into the vault's secure terminal. The screen blinks, then loads a series of grainy clips. Bodycam footage. Static. Running through low-lit tunnels. Breathing that sounds too fast, too sharp. Then, Callum Vance's voice. "Keep your eyes forward, Hale. Don't stop, no matter what happens." She watches in silence. Another clip loads. The camera shakes. Light flashes. A silhouette pulls her through an opening, pushes her upward, and shouts something she barely hears. "Go!" The footage ends with static. She was pulled out of the tunnels. Vance stayed behind. But now he's alive. And he's using Winterhold. Nova removes the drive and pockets it. The past answers very little, but it confirms one thing. Callum Vance didn't disappear by accident. Someone helped him vanish. She opens the metal case again and takes out the folded map. The marked routes, escape vectors, safe houses, all handwritten by Vance. But she notices something she missed years ago. One of the routes is circled twice. A small, almost invisible annotation runs beside it. Fallback Delta. If compromised, return to origin. Return to origin. The words settle in her mind. The origin is not Caracas, not Ravenwood, not Winterhold. The origin is the place where Vance built the prototype from nothing. The only location off record, undocumented, left out of every file she submitted. A place only 2 people in the world knew existed, her and Callum Vance. A shadow moves in the doorway. Nova turns fast, but relaxes when she sees who it is. President Sloan. He steps inside quietly, hands folded behind his back. "Director Keene told me you were down here. I thought you might need someone to walk back with." "I'm fine," she says, closing the case. "I believe you," Sloan replies. "But being fine doesn't mean being alone." She studies him for a moment. The president is not an easy man to read, but after years of protected briefings and classified operations, she has learned to recognize sincerity when she hears it. "Did you find what you needed?" he asks. "Not everything," she admits. "But enough." "Enough for what?" Nova tucks the notebook into her jacket. "Enough to know Callum isn't acting alone." Sloan exhales, steady but concerned. "Then we have another problem." He hands her a secure phone. A single message is displayed on the screen. "If she goes back to where it started, we'll be waiting." It's signed with one symbol, a black triangle. Nova's pulse stays calm, but her eyes sharpen. "We," she echoes quietly. Sloan nods. "Whoever Vance is working with, they expect you." Nova steps past him, out of the vault, into the dim corridor. "Let them expect me," she says. "They still don't understand one thing." "And what's that?" Sloan asks. Nova looks ahead, unblinking. "I don't go back to settle history. I go back to finish what I started." There are places the United States intelligence community pretends not to know about. Facilities built under contracts that no longer exist, in regions where jurisdiction becomes fog. The kind of places used once and then abandoned, buried under newer programs and renamed budgets. One of those places lies deep in the Nevada desert, not near anything, not on any grid, not within radio distance of anything public or recognizable. A forgotten testing site, the origin of Winterhold. Agent Nova Hale sits quietly inside the transport jet as it cuts through the clouds. The cabin is empty except for her and Director Keene, who insisted on accompanying her, despite the president's request that he stay in Washington. Keene studies her expression while pretending not to. The hum of the aircraft fills the space between them. "You haven't asked why I'm coming along," he says finally. Nova keeps her eyes on the runway lights flickering on the display screen. You wouldn't come unless you believed someone inside Ravenwood compromised the operation. Keen exhales slowly. You were always too perceptive. You were always too transparent, she replies evenly. He smiles faintly at that, a small, tired curve of the mouth. Fair enough. The jet descends, the engines dropping pitch as they angle toward a patch of desert that looks from above like nothing more than a stretch of flat earth. But to Nova, the shapes beneath the sand are familiar. Structures, entrances, the faint outlines of a base that should not exist anymore. As soon as the wheels touch down, Nova unbuckles. Keen follows. A pair of tactical vehicles approach, headlights dimmed. 2 field agents step out, both wearing desert gear and neutral expressions. Agent Hale, one of them says. Director Keen, welcome back. Back. Nova nods once, recognizing the undertone. Word had spread faster than expected. Status? She asks. Perimeter is secured. No motion detected within the last 6 hours. No signs of forced entry. But we haven't gone inside yet. Keen frowns. Why not? The agent hesitates. We thought Agent Hale should be the first. Nova steps forward, dust swirling around her boots. The air is sharp and dry, the kind that holds on to silence. Ahead lies a service hatch, half covered by sand. She remembers pulling the latch open 8 years ago, with Callum Vance at her side. She remembers descending into the concrete tunnels, carrying the prototype's early components. She remembers the laughter, rare, quiet, fleeting, between missions before everything went wrong. Now the hatch is sealed again, waiting. Nova kneels, brushing sand away with the side of her hand. The metal is cool, despite the heat of the desert. She enters her clearance code manually, an old sequence she never expected to use again. The panel blinks. Access accepted. A hiss of hydraulics rises from below, and the hatch opens. The descent ladder waits in darkness. Keen shines a light into the opening. You remember the layout. Nova grips the ladder. Better than I want to. She climbs down, one rung at a time. At the bottom, she lands in a narrow corridor where concrete walls meet exposed wiring. The scent of dust and metal hangs in the air. Keen follows, along with the 2 field agents. Their flashlights cut through the darkness in thin beams. Every step echoes. Nova moves slowly, scanning corners, edges, ceiling joints. Everything is intact. No signs of tampering. No new footprints. It is exactly as it was left. Exactly too untouched. This doesn't feel right, Keen murmurs. It isn't, Nova replies. They reach a door marked Labby B, Winterhold Design. Nova stops. Her hand hovers over the panel. This is where Callum built the prototype, she says quietly. Where he built everything. Keen steps beside her. Then this is where he wants you to be. Nova presses the panel. The door unlocks. Inside, the room is just as she remembers. Metal tables, old monitors, scattered tools, blueprints pinned to a board. But something new sits on the central workstation. A small, black, triangular device. Clean. Untouched. Recently placed. A message appears on the monitor beside it. Welcome back, Nova. You always understood the design. Now understand the truth. Keen stiffens. That device wasn't here before. Nova approaches slowly. The triangular object emits a faint pulse of light. Steady, rhythmic. She leans closer. It's a beacon, she says. Not a trap. A signal. A signal to what? Keen asks. Nova's voice lowers. To show us who else is inside. The lights flicker. The air shifts. Footsteps echo from somewhere deeper in the facility. Measured, calm, deliberate. Keen reaches for his comms. But Nova lifts her hand, stopping him. No comms, she says. He can hear them. The footsteps grow closer. Nova turns towards the sound. Heart rate steady, eyes sharp. Someone steps into the edge of the flashlight beam. Not Callum Vance. A stranger. but wearing the same black triangle emblem, and smiling, as if he has been waiting for this moment. "Agent Hale," he says softly. "He said you'd come." Nova takes one step forward. "And who are you?" The stranger inclines his head. "Someone who survived because he didn't." The stranger's smile is calm, almost polite, but nothing about him feels harmless. He stands just outside the main beam of the flashlight, letting only part of his face show. Enough to be seen, not enough to be known. Director Keene steps forward, one hand hovering near his holster. "Identify yourself," he orders. The man's smile widens a fraction. "If I told you my real name, you wouldn't believe me. And if I told you the name I use now, it wouldn't matter." Nova doesn't flinch. "You're wearing the triangle." The man touches the black emblem stitched on his vest as if acknowledging a badge of honor. "We all wear it. Those of us who survived." Keene shakes his head. "Survived what? Vance's unit? Those tunnels collapsed. No one made it out except Agent Hale." The stranger tilts his head. "That's what the report said. Convenient, wasn't it?" Nova steps forward, her flashlight rising just enough to illuminate more of the man's face. His expression doesn't change, but his eyes flicker with something. Recognition, maybe admiration, maybe warning. "Why did Vance send you?" she asks. The man lets out a soft breath. "Because he wanted you to understand that you weren't abandoned. And you weren't alone. Not then. Not now." Keene frowns. "What does that mean?" The stranger gestures toward the old lab around them. This place wasn't destroyed by accident. Winterhold wasn't compromised by chance. Someone gave orders to erase everything, including the people working on it. Nova's jaw tightens. "Who gave those orders?" The stranger's eyes find hers again, steady and controlled. "Ask yourself, Hale, who benefited from removing the only team capable of building something like the prototype? Who rose in clearance level after the breach? Who kept the project buried for 8 years?" Keene's voice drops. "Are you implying someone inside the command structure orchestrated the collapse?" "I'm not implying anything," the stranger replies. "I'm telling you Callum knows who it was, and he's waiting for you to know too." Nova keeps her breathing steady. "If Callum wants me to know something, he can tell me himself. Why talk through intermediaries?" The man's gaze softens, not warm, but almost respectful. "Because he can't be here yet. He needs time, and you needed to see this place first." He steps to the side, just enough for them to see what the beacon device had been signaling. A second door is cracked open along the far wall. One Nova never noticed during earlier missions. It wasn't part of the original layout. No hinges, no markings, just a slit in the concrete that blends with the shadows. Keene squints. "That door wasn't on the plans." "No," the stranger agrees. "Because Callum built it himself. He needed a place to store the one thing even your team wasn't ready to see." Nova's pulse stays steady, but her grip tightens slightly on her flashlight. "What's behind it?" The stranger steps aside fully. "What started all of this?" The room falls into a heavier silence. Nova looks at him carefully. "If this is a trap..." "It's not," he says quickly. "Callum would never hurt you. You know that, even if you don't want to say it out loud." Keene studies the stranger's face. "You were in the tunnels that day." The man nods. "I was one of the 4 operators assigned to the secondary grid. We got separated in the collapse. Callum stayed with us. Told you to run. You think he stayed behind to die? No. He stayed behind to push us through the emergency route. The one you never found." Nova's chest tightens, not with fear, but with something sharper. Memory. A flash of the moment she was shoved upward, hearing someone shout, "Go!" before everything turned to smoke. "You escaped," Nova says quietly. "3 of us did," the man replies. "1 didn't make it. And Callum, he made sure we weren't found. He hid us because he knew if anyone learned we survived, The truth about Winterhold would come out. Keen glances at Nova. He hid survivors from us? Why? The stranger answers without hesitation. Because someone inside your system wanted the project erased, and Callum knew the only way to protect us was to disappear. Nova steps towards the narrow opening in the concrete wall. If Callum trusts you, then you know what's behind this door. The man nods once. I do. And? She presses. It's the original blueprint room, he says. The notes, the data, the prototype logs, everything they claimed was destroyed, everything someone tried to wipe out, and everything Callum recovered. Nova takes a slow breath. Keen whispers, "This could reveal who betrayed the unit." It could, the stranger agrees. Or it could reveal why they needed you to survive and not him. Nova steps closer to the door. The stranger watches her with steady eyes. Callum said you'd open it. He said only you would know what to look for. Nova touches the edge of the door. It shifts easily, almost too easily. Inside is darkness, thick, unmoving, absolute. She takes one step in, then another. The air feels cold, untouched by time. Behind her, the stranger speaks one more time. Agent Hale, he says softly. What you're searching for isn't just a traitor. Nova pauses. It's a truth that was buried because it was too dangerous to keep alive. And with that, she disappears into the dark. The darkness inside the hidden room feels different from the rest of the facility. Not empty, not abandoned, intentional. The kind of darkness created when someone doesn't want something to be found. Nova's flashlight cuts through it in a thin, white beam, illuminating motes of dust suspended in still air. The space is small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet, with metal cabinets lining the walls and a single workbench at the center. It looks untouched, as if frozen at the exact moment it was sealed. No signs of intrusion. No footprints. No rearranged equipment. This is a room built to keep secrets alive, not hide them. Director Keen steps in behind her, scanning the walls with a light of his own. The two field agents hover at the doorway, unsure whether to enter. Nova moves toward the workbench. On it lies a single object. A hard-bound binder with a black cover and no markings. A faint coating of dust softens its edges. Her fingers brush across the surface. We never logged this, Keen murmurs. I know, Nova replies. Callum kept the original notes separate. She opens the binder. The first page is filled with clean, precise handwriting. Callum Vance's. He had always written this way, even in the field. Straight lines, consistent spacing, no hesitation. The header reads, Winterhold, original design. Specifications by C. Vance Keen leans over her shoulder, reading quickly. These diagrams, they're cleaner than anything we recovered. More complete. Nova turns the page. There are sketches of the prototype's early stages. Schematics for a defensive network system capable of protecting critical infrastructure without requiring direct human input. It wasn't a weapon. Not at first. It was a safeguard. A system designed to detect threats before they formed. Self-learning, self-correcting, self-defending. Nova remembers the early enthusiasm in Callum's voice when he explained it. We're building a guardian, he'd said. Not something that destroys, but something that prevents destruction. That was before the breach, before everything shifted. She flips another page. This one is different. Not tidy, not structured. A section of the page is circled in red ink with a short note written at an angle. If they find this, everything ends. Keen frowns. They? Nova studies the handwriting. Callum never used vague words. If he wrote they, he meant a specific group. Keen scans the room. Do you think he meant Ravenwood leadership? No, Nova says. He trusted Ravenwood. He trusted the division. This was something else. She turns to the next page. At the bottom are initials. 3 sets, written beside a table of test results. CVNHMR Keen points. Who is MR? Nova's expression shifts, barely, but enough for Keen to notice. Marcus Wren, she says quietly. Keen freezes. Wren, the former deputy director. Nova nods slowly. He oversaw the Winterhold funding cycles. He approved every off-book supply request. But Wren died 6 years ago, Keen says. Heart failure. Nova doesn't respond. Keen stares at her. You don't think... Heart failure is a convenient explanation, she says. Especially when someone wants a chapter closed. Keen rubs his forehead. If Wren was part of this, then... Nova turns to the binder again. A folded sheet falls out. She catches it before it hits the floor. Unfolding it reveals a hand-drawn map of the Nevada facility. This facility, but with extra markings that aren't on any official blueprint. Additional rooms, hidden routes, a secondary power source, and one circle drawn in thick red. Origin core. Access restricted. Keen studies the map. There's another level. Nova nods. This isn't the bottom. The stranger who brought them here appears in the doorway once more, as if pulled by the sound of discovery. He said you'd find it quickly, he says. Keen turns sharply. You knew about this? The stranger lifts his chin. Callum wanted the truth exposed, not the version written into reports, the real one. Nova motions to the binder. Tell me about Wren. The man steps forward, voice steady. Wren wasn't just funding the project. He was directing it behind the scenes. He wanted a version of Winterhold that could be controlled, not one that learned on its own. Callum refused, so Wren created a shadow team to adjust the prototype in secret. Keen stiffens. That would have compromised the entire system. It did, the stranger replies. That's why the breach happened. Fine, Nova processes it, letting the pieces reorganize in her mind. So the collapse wasn't sabotage from outside? No, the stranger answers. It was the system failing because of the unauthorized modifications. Wren covered it up. He needed the project erased so no one would discover he altered it. Keen's voice lowers. And Callum kept the original data. Yes, and he hid the survivors, the stranger says. Because he knew if the truth came out, whoever orchestrated the cover-up would come after all of us. Nova closes the binder gently. Then the countdown isn't about activating the prototype. It's about revealing Wren's shadow program. Keen's eyes widen. If that truth surfaces... The entire intelligence structure shifts, Nova finishes. Trust collapses. Protocols change. Everyone who approved the cover-up becomes vulnerable. The stranger glances at the red circle on the map. He said the final piece is in the origin core. That's where he wants you to go. Keen folds his arms. And what exactly is in there? The stranger looks at Nova, expression steady. Proof, he says, enough to expose everything. Nova takes the map. We go now, she says. But as she turns toward the door, the floor trembles. Just once, faintly, like something underneath the facility is waking up. The stranger's eyes snap wide. It's starting, he whispers. Nova stops. What is? The protocol Callum warned about, he says. Someone else discovered the core. The tremor fades, but the silence it leaves behind is sharper than vibration. Even the air feels different, as if the facility itself just remembered something it was built to forget. Nova Hale steadies her flashlight, eyes narrowing towards the far hallway. She doesn't panic. She doesn't rush. She listens. The floor stops moving, yet something beneath them continues. Humming. A low, distant frequency. Mechanical, but too faint to locate. Director Keen steps beside her. That wasn't structural settling. No, Nova replies. It was activation. The stranger, the man wearing the triangle emblem, presses his hand against the concrete wall. The origin core has its own independent power source. Callum warned that if someone accessed it without authorization, it would initiate a fail-safe. Keen stiffens. Failsafe meaning what? The stranger meets Nova's eyes. Meaning the truth stays buried, by any means. Nova doesn't waste time. She unrolls Callum's map on the nearest surface. The red circle is positioned beneath the blueprint room. A staircase drawn in thin pencil leads downward, but the actual location is unlabeled on official plans. "It's here," she says, pointing. "Behind the west maintenance corridor." Keen frowns. "That wall is solid concrete." "It's supposed to be," Nova answers. The stranger nods. "Callum built access into the old wiring junction. You'll see it if you know what to look for." Nova picks up her gear and moves towards the west corridor without hesitation. The others follow, beams of light sweeping across dust-coated floors and aging pipes. The hum beneath their feet grows slightly stronger. They reach the corridor. Keen studies the wall. Nothing. "Look again," Nova says. She steps close to the exposed wiring panel. It's dusty, untouched, but one small detail stands out. A single screw on the lower left corner is newer than the others. Bare metal, no rust, recently disturbed. Nova twists it, and the entire panel shifts silently. Behind it is a recessed handle. Keen's jaw drops. He built a door inside a junction box. Nova pulls the hidden handle. The seamless concrete wall slides open by a few inches, silent, precise, engineered by someone who never expected anyone but Hale to find it. The stranger watches her, expression unreadable. "He trusted you with everything." Nova doesn't answer. She's already moving through the narrow opening. The others follow into a descending staircase carved directly into bedrock. Lights flicker on automatically as they step deeper, illuminating metallic walls and old conduit. The hum is louder now, pulsing like a distant heartbeat. Keen glances around. This is beyond anything the reports described. "That's because Wren removed it from the reports," Nova says. "He wanted the project to look unstable. Too experimental. Too dangerous to keep funding." The stranger adds quietly, "And destroying the core meant destroying the evidence." The staircase ends at a reinforced door, heavier than anything above ground. No handle, no lock. A flat sensor panel glows softly beside it. Keen shakes his head. "How do we open this?" Nova steps forward. She places her hand on the panel. A sharp tone beeps. Then another. Then the door begins to part. Keen stares. "Your biometrics?" "Callum embedded our unit signatures as the only authorized access," Nova explains. "Not Ravenwood's, not the Pentagon's, just us." The door slides open fully. Inside is the Origin core. A massive circular chamber, cold and still, illuminated by white strips of light embedded in the walls. In the center stands a cylindrical structure, tall, metallic, surrounded by transparent panels. Inside are racks of old hardware, cables, memory units, and handwritten notes sealed behind glass. Everything preserved, everything untouched, everything dangerous. Keen steps inside slowly. This is the entire original project," the stranger nods. "The real version, before Wren altered it." Nova approaches the central cylinder. Her reflection shifts across the glass as she studies the contents. Schematics, drives, logs. Then she sees something that makes her pulse tighten ever so slightly. A small metal case marked with 2 letters. NH, Keen notices. "That's yours." Nova opens the glass panel. Inside the case is a single data drive, thin, black, unmarked. She picks it up carefully. The drive is warm, as if it had been active recently. Keen lowers his voice. "What's on it?" Nova turns the drive over once, twice, studying the engraved edge. A tiny inscription sits along the metal. "You were right." CV. She closes her hand around it. The hum beneath them grows louder. Not mechanical anymore. Electrical. Keen steps back. "Nova, something's powering up." The lights flicker. The floor vibrates. The stranger's eyes widen. "Someone else activated the core. This isn't Callum. This is someone trying to wipe the archives. Nova looks toward the ceiling as dust falls in thin streams. Keen's voice is urgent. If the failsafe triggers, the whole chamber could wipe itself clean. Or worse, lock down permanently. Nova pockets the drive. Then we're leaving. But the stranger doesn't move. He listens. A faint echo travels down the staircase. Footsteps. More than one set. Steady. Coordinated. Keen whispers, "Who else knows about this entrance?" Nova answers without hesitation. "No one who should be walking toward us." The footsteps grow louder. The lights dim. The hum spikes. Someone else has reached the core, and they're not here to recover the truth. The footsteps descend the hidden staircase with a precision that sends a cold ripple through the origin core. These aren't the uncertain steps of explorers stumbling into something they don't understand. They are synchronized, confident, prepared. Nova Hale steps away from the central cylinder, raising her flashlight just enough to illuminate the upper platform. She doesn't speak. She doesn't move fast. She doesn't show surprise. She simply waits, as if she had expected this moment all along. Director Keen positions himself beside her, jaw tight. The stranger, triangle emblem still catching the faint light, shifts closer to the exit, listening to the rhythm of the approaching movement. The hum from the core vibrates through the floor in rising waves. Keen whispers, "They're organized, whoever they are." Nova nods slightly. "They trained for this." "What makes you sure?" Keen asks. Nova's eyes stay fixed on the staircase. "Because they're not hesitating." The footsteps become clearer. Then the first silhouette appears. A figure wearing matte black tactical gear, unlabeled, untagged, untraceable. Not military, not Ravenwood, not any sanctioned agency. 2 more figures follow. 3, 4, 5. Each stepping down with absolute unity. The leader, tall, steady, mask obscuring everything but sharp, clear eyes, pauses at the last step. He takes in the chamber, the cylinder, the lights flickering across the walls, and finally, Nova. There is no surprise on his face, no confusion, only recognition. He steps forward. "Agent Hale," he says calmly. Keen stiffens. How does he know your name? But Nova is already studying the leader's posture, the small movements of his shoulders, the angle of his head. Then she speaks. "You're not from Vance's group," she says. "No," the leader replies. "We're not. You're not with Ravenwood. We're not. And you're not independent contractors. No." Keen's eyes dart between them. "Then who are you working for?" The leader's answer is simple, almost quiet, yet heavy enough to shift the air. "We work for the person who tried to end Winterhold." The stranger beside Nova lowers his voice. "Wren." The leader nods. Deputy Director Marcus Wren did not act alone. He had an entire auxiliary network, one that never disbanded after his passing. Keen frowns. "Wren has been dead for years." The leader's eyes fix on him. "People like Wren don't disappear when their names leave the directory. They leave behind successors." He gestures around the core. Winterhold was never meant to survive, and the truth inside this room was never meant to see daylight. Nova steps forward, not rushed, not defensive, simply asserting space. "If your network wanted the project gone," she says, "why wait 8 years?" The leader studies her for a long moment. "Because we believed the collapse in Caracas erased everything. We were told there were no survivors." His eyes shift to the stranger in the triangle emblem. "And yet, here you stand." The stranger doesn't flinch. "Callum saved us. He saved all of us." The leader's jaw tightens, not in anger, but in realization. Then the breach wasn't final. The evidence wasn't destroyed. He looks at Nova. "And neither were you." The hum in the chamber intensifies, vibrating through metal and floor panels. Keen looks around nervously. The failsafe is still active. If we don't get out! The leader lifts a hand. His team lowers their weapons, but doesn't step back. No one is leaving until the archives are secured. Nova looks at him steadily. Secured for who? The leader meets her gaze without blinking. For the network. To ensure the truth stays buried. And to ensure what Callum Vance created never becomes public knowledge. Nova holds his stare. Keen whispers, "They're here to erase everything." "No," Nova says quietly. "They're here to erase everyone who knows." The leader's posture shifts in the slightest way, a confirmation without words. Keen takes a step closer to Nova. "We're outnumbered." Nova answers softly, eyes locked on the leader. "Not outmatched." The leader tilts his head. "You don't understand, Agent Hale. You're here because we needed to confirm one thing." Nova doesn't move. "What's that?" "That Callum Vance isn't acting alone. That you're part of this. That you came back to finish what the original team started." Nova's voice is steady. "You're wrong." "Am I?" the leader asks, almost gently. "Then why did he leave a message only you would understand? Why did he lead you here? Why did he ensure you found the original drive?" Keen steps forward sharply. "Enough. If you want to talk, we can talk upstairs." But the leader raises a hand. The hum rises, the lights flicker, and then the chamber seals with a metallic thud, locking all of them inside. The leader's eyes settle on Nova. "Callum Vance brought you back into the open, Agent Hale, and now that you're here..." A pause. "The rest of the plan begins." The metallic thud echoes through the origin core like a final decision. The chamber is sealed, airtight, soundproof, impenetrable from the outside. Lights flicker overhead, stabilizing into a dim, cold glow. No alarms, no countdown on the screen. Just silence and 6 people who should not be standing in the same room. Nova Hale doesn't turn towards the door. She already knows the mechanism. Once closed, it requires dual biometric verification from the original Winterhold creators. And she is one of the last remaining. The leader of the masked team stands in front of her with calm calculation, his gloved hands resting at his sides. His team forms a neat line behind him, silent and still. Director Keen steps closer to Nova, voice low. "If that door stays locked, we have minutes before the failsafe resets this room." The stranger, the one loyal to Callum, shakes his head. "Ren's people wouldn't seal us inside unless they were sure they could control the outcome." The leader speaks, voice steady. "Control isn't the goal. Containment is." Nova finally turns her flashlight directly on him, illuminating the contour of his mask. "You sealed the door," she says. "That means you know what happens next." He nods. The core enters preservation mode. Data will be inaccessible. No one can remove anything until the failsafe completes. Keen folds his arms. "And what happens after that?" The leader looks between them, then answers with unsettling clarity. "The core decides who stays in the record and who gets erased from it." A tense beat of silence follows. Nova doesn't react with fear. She reacts with analysis. "If the failsafe is active, why trap yourselves in here with us?" "Because," the leader says, "we needed to witness your reaction." He steps forward one pace. "Callum Vance wants to expose a secret that was buried for a reason. Ren's network exists to protect national stability. If Winterhold's true origin is made public, trust in our institutions collapses." Nova answers calmly. "The cover-up already collapsed the trust." The leader pauses. "Perhaps. But we still have a duty to prevent chaos." Keen shakes his head. "You're trying to rewrite the narrative." "No," the leader replies. "We're trying to maintain it." The hum beneath their feet sharpens. A thin vibration vibrates the metal case in Nova's pocket. The drive Callum left for her. She touches it subconsciously. The leader notices. "That drive," he says, "is what we need." Nova steps back. You're not getting it. Keen stands beside her. The stranger shifts subtly, aligning his stance with hers. The leader doesn't move. Agent Hale, you don't understand what's on that drive. I understand enough, Nova says. Callum left information that proves the collapse in Caracas wasn't an accident. And that, the leader replies, is precisely why we can't allow this data to surface. Keen steps forward. You're saying Wren sabotaged his own project? The leader's eyes lock onto his. Wren didn't sabotage Winterhold. He prevented it from being taken over. Nova's voice is sharp and quiet. Taken over by who? The leader hesitates. Then, by the people Callum trusted. The stranger tenses. Callum never betrayed this country. That's not what I said, the leader answers. But he believed Winterhold could evolve beyond human oversight. Wren disagreed. He believed some systems must always be controlled by people, not algorithms. Nova holds his gaze. You're misrepresenting the truth. Am I? The leader replies. Then tell me, what do you think Winterhold really was? Nova opens her mouth. But the chamber lights suddenly dim. A low tone vibrates through the entire core. The failsafe. The leader glances up. We're out of time. Keen's voice tightens. This is your doing. The leader shakes his head. You don't understand. None of us triggered the failsafe. The stranger looks around sharply. Then who did? Nova's hand closes around the drive in her pocket. A faint orange light flickers inside the central cylinder. The racks of old hardware activating one by one in a wave, like dominoes of illumination moving from bottom to top. The hum deepens. The air warms. The floor shakes again, just slightly. Keen grabs Nova's arm. What's happening? The leader answers softly, almost with respect. Callum Vance just turned the core back on. Nova's eyes widen, not in fear, but in realization. He's inside the system, she whispers. The leader nods. He never left. For the first time since entering the hidden entrance, Nova feels the shift. Not danger, not panic, but inevitability. The core lights surge. Every panel turns bright white. The chamber hums like a heartbeat, awakening after years of silence. And then, from the speakers embedded in the walls, a voice emerges. Clear, calm, unmistakably real. A voice she hasn't heard since the day the tunnels fell. Nova, step away from them. The masked leader stiffens. Keen freezes. The stranger's breath catches. Nova Hale lifts her head toward the ceiling. Callum Vance is alive. And he knows exactly where she's standing. The voice echoes through the origin core. Steady, calm, unmistakably human. Not synthetic, not distorted, not a recording. Alive. Callum Vance. Director Keen's breath catches. The stranger wearing the triangle emblem straightens sharply, as if hearing a command from an old commander. Even the leader of the masked network shifts a fraction, tension climbing into his shoulders. But Nova Hale stands completely still, not frozen, not afraid, just processing. She tilts her chin upward towards the speakers embedded invisibly in the ceiling. Callum, she says quietly, you're in the core. A soft crackle answers her, feedback from systems that haven't been used in nearly a decade. Then, I never left, Nova. The masked leader takes a step forward. Vance, you don't understand what you're doing. This system wasn't meant to be reactivated. Callum's reply is immediate. You weren't meant to be in this room. The leader stiffens. Keen looks between them. Callum, how much of this facility do you control right now? There's a pause then. All of it. The hum intensifies. The white lights shift slightly, not brighter, but more focused. Like the room itself is paying attention, the way an animal adjusts its stance before moving. Nova takes a slow breath. Callum, if you can hear everything in this chamber, then you know why we're here. The drive, the logs, the truth. There's a soft exhale through the speakers. A breath that doesn't sound tired, but heavy with memory. I knew you'd come back, he says. I told them you would. Nova's expression darkens subtly. Them. The stranger steps forward. He means us, the ones he saved. But Callum corrects him gently. Not only you. Keen looks sharply at Nova. He left messages for others? The masked network leader raises a gloved hand. Vance is manipulating all of us. This activation is not part of any authorized protocol. Callum responds with ice in his tone. Your network doesn't get to speak about authorization. The leader's team shifts uneasily. Nova steps slightly closer to the center of the chamber, placing herself between both sides without making it look intentional. Callum, she says, you triggered the failsafe. Why? A long pause. Then, because the failsafe wasn't designed to destroy information. Keen frowns. Then what is it designed to do? The central cylinder, the glass case holding the original hardware, lights up in a patterned sequence. Rows of old drives flicker like waking neurons. Callum's voice softens. To separate lies from truth. Nova tightens her grip on the drive in her pocket. The core can do that. Only with the original data, Callum replies, which you just picked up. Keen stares at Nova. It's reactive to her. Why? Callum answers without hesitation. Because she was the only one who never lied. Silence stretches. Keen shifts his weight, discomfort rising on his face, not because of guilt, but because the parameters of the conversation are shifting outside his control. The masked leader breaks the silence. Vance, listen to me. Whatever you think you're protecting, you're risking national stability. Winterhold was shut down for a reason. This Callum's reply holds no anger, only certainty. Yes, because Wren wanted it erased. The leader shakes his head. Wren was following protocol. Wren rewrote protocol, Callum snaps. And he didn't tell you everything. Nova steps forward, voice calm but cutting. Callum, what did he hide? The chamber lights shift again, dimming, then focusing on the rear wall where a screen slides downward slowly, dust drifting off its corners. The screen flickers. Static. Then an image. A document, stamped with an old classification marking. Winterhold Auxiliary Directive, authorized by Embjezren Keen, steps closer. I've never seen that directive. Neither had I, the stranger mutters. Nova scans the header. This isn't the project we worked on. Callum responds softly, almost with sadness. Because Wren built his own version behind our backs. Keen blinks. A shadow project? A takeover, Callum says. One that required our version to fail, and our team to disappear. The masked leader's jaw tightens beneath his visor. If that's true, then the network was built on a lie. Callum continues. Wren's auxiliary system wasn't defensive. It was predictive. Keen's eyes widen. Predictive? As in? Nova finishes for him. Surveillance, pattern mapping, behavior tracking. Callum's voice lowers. It wasn't a guardian. It was a preemptive control mechanism. The chamber goes silent. Keen mutters. Wren created a program that could track threats before they existed. No, Nova corrects. One that could label anyone a threat. The masked leader looks shaken for the first time. Vance, if this is true, then everything we've protected, Callum interrupts, was never meant to protect the country. He lets the word settle. It was meant to protect him. Another tremor shakes the chamber, stronger this time. Keen steadies himself. Callum, what's happening now? The lights flicker. The core shifts into final phase. Callum's voice deepens. It's time to show you everything. And then the chamber doors begin to unlock, not to let them out, but to let someone else in. Footsteps approach, clear, purposeful, unhurried. Nova turns towards the entrance. Her pulse stays steady, because she recognizes that rhythm. Callum Vance isn't speaking from the system anymore. He's descending the staircase, alive, and walking straight into the chamber. The footsteps echo down the hidden staircase, slow, steady, controlled. Each one reverberates through the origin core, as if the facility itself recognizes the sound. No one speaks. No one moves. Every breath hangs suspended in the cold air. Director Keen glances at Nova, but she doesn't look back. Her eyes stay locked on the staircase entrance. She doesn't breathe faster. She doesn't blink. She simply waits. Then he appears. Callum Vance steps into view. He looks nothing like a ghost. Nothing like a man who vanished beneath collapsed tunnels 8 years ago. He walks with purpose, back straight, eyes clear, presence sharp and unmistakable. Older, yes. Thinner, marked by time, but undeniably alive. The masked network team subtly shift into defensive positions, but none raise their weapons. Because something about Callum's presence doesn't invite hostility. It demands attention. Nova takes one step forward. Not hesitant, not emotional, just precise. "Callum," she says softly. His gaze meets hers, and for the first time since he spoke through the speakers, his face changes. The edges soften, not into a smile, not into relief, but something heavier and quieter. Recognition and regret. "Nova," he says. Keen exhales quietly, awe breaking through his professional composure. "You survived." Callum doesn't look away from Nova. Survival wasn't the goal. Preservation was. The masked leader steps forward cautiously. "Vance, before anything else, you owe us an explanation." Callum's attention shifts to him, not with hostility, but with a clinical calm. "What do you want explained first? The collapse? The cover-up? Or the fact that Wren's auxiliary directive operated without your knowledge?" The leader stiffens at the last part. Keen interrupts, voice sharp. "Callum, Wren died years ago. If he ran a shadow operation..." "He didn't run it alone," Callum says, "and he didn't leave it unprotected." He glances at the masked team. "You inherited something you were never meant to fully understand. And now you're starting to see why." The hum in the chamber deepens, vibrating through the metal floor. Lights flicker again, though less violently, as if responding to Callum's presence rather than malfunctioning. Nova steps closer, her voice calm but direct. "Callum, why now? Why reveal yourself only today?" He finally looks at her fully. "Because you're the only one who had to see the truth with your own eyes. I couldn't tell you through encrypted messages. I couldn't risk interception, and I couldn't return until I knew the core was awake." Nova's jaw tightens a fraction. "You triggered the failsafe." "Yes. Why?" Callum walks toward the central cylinder, slowly, deliberately, letting his hand drift across the glass as if reacquainting himself with something he had built piece by piece. "Because this facility stores 2 versions of Winterhold," he says. "The one we designed, and the one Wren corrupted." Keen steps forward. "We saw the auxiliary directive." Callum nods. "Then you know Wren created a predictive control system, not a defensive one." The masked leader clenches his fists. "If that's true, our entire network has been operating under the wrong mandate." Callum looks at him gently. "Not the wrong mandate. An incomplete one." The room goes quiet. Nova watches him carefully. "You could have exposed the truth years ago." Callum closes his eyes briefly, a shadow crossing his expression. "You know why I couldn't." The stranger, the survivor from Callum's hidden team, steps closer. "Because if the world learned anyone survived the tunnels, the whole story would unravel." Callum nods slowly. "And people far more dangerous than Wren We're counting on the world not asking questions. Keen looks genuinely alarmed. More dangerous? Yes, Callum says quietly. Ren wasn't the architect. He was following orders. The masked leader speaks evenly. Whose orders? Callum raises his eyes to meet his. Someone inside the national security chain who believed Winterhold was a threat to balance. Someone who viewed the original team as unpredictable because we refused to turn a defensive system into a weapon of influence. He pauses. And someone whose clearance outranked yours, Director Keen. Keen freezes. Outranked mine? The only person who outrank, Callum shakes his head. Not the president. The room's temperature seems to drop. Nova narrows her eyes. Then who? Callum looks directly at her. Someone who sat above Ravenwood. Someone who approved every black budget project for 30 years. Someone whose directives were never publicly recorded. Keen goes pale. That would mean... Callum finishes for him. The true architect of the Shadow Network was the former National Intelligence Secretary. No one breathes. The secretary died 5 years ago, the masked leader says slowly. Callum nods. Yes, but not before building a structure designed to protect his version of national security. Nova studies Callum with absolute focus. So, the countdown, the threat, the message. None of this was about unleashing the prototype? No, Callum says softly. It was about forcing the core to reopen. And bringing all of you into one room. Keen swallows hard. Why all of us? Callum turns, eyes scanning each face. Because the truth isn't one secret. A beat. It's the intersection of all of yours. The chamber hum shifts again. This time not as warning, but as invitation. Callum looks at Nova. It's time, he says. You're the only one who can activate the original system. Nova steps forward, but before she reaches the cylinder, a red emergency light flashes once, then twice. Someone else has entered the facility. Not Callum's people, not Ren's network, not Keen's team. Someone unexpected, someone unaccounted for, someone who wasn't supposed to know any of this existed. Nova's pulse stays steady. The enemy has arrived, and they're not hiding their steps. The red emergency light washes the origin core in pulses of muted crimson. Each flash deepens the shadows, sharpens the outlines of every person inside, and makes the silence feel tighter. Not chaotic, not rushed, but alert. Someone has entered the facility, someone with enough clearance to bypass the first 2 levels. Someone none of them were expecting. Director Keen steps toward the sealed chamber doors. This isn't possible! No one else was authorized for the desert grid today. The masked leader clenches his fists. We didn't call reinforcements! The stranger, the survivor loyal to Callum, shakes his head. Neither did we. Another pulse of red light. Another echo. Not footsteps this time. Something heavier. Metal shifting. Locks disengaging on the floors above. Callum Vance raises his hand, signaling everyone to stay silent. The hum of the core responds to him like a living presence, stabilizing just enough for the faint noises upstairs to become clearer. A voice. Distant, muffled, distorted by concrete. Then another. Another. Multiple. Nova listens carefully, eyes narrowing. That's a tactical sweep pattern, she murmurs. Controlled. 3-person lead, 2-person rearguard. They're coming in organized. Keen swallows. Military? No, Nova answers. Military would announce themselves. This team is silent by training. The masked leader straightens. You're saying there's a third faction? Callum finally speaks, voice low and certain. Yes. Everyone turns toward him. Callum walks toward the edge of the chamber, his steps slow, measured. There were 3 groups who knew about Winterhold, our original team, Ren's auxiliary network, and 1 more. Keen shakes his head. There was no other authorized division. Callum's reply is gentle and devastating. Authorization was never the problem. Oversight was. The stranger stiffens. You mean? Yes, Callum says. A small intelligence council inside the former secretary's office. People selected not for rank, but for loyalty. A group built to step in if Wren's project ever failed. The masked leader looks unsettled. Why didn't we know? Because you weren't meant to, Callum answers. They only act when control begins to slip, and right now, control is slipping. Another metallic echo from the levels above. Closer. Nova looks at Callum directly. What do they want? Callum's expression tightens. Not fear, but precision. They want the Origin core shut down, permanently. And they want everyone who's seen the real data removed from the equation. Keen exhales sharply. So they don't want Winterhold. They want to erase it. Callum nods. Every trace. Nova steps forward, her posture steady. Callum, did you know they were still active? Callum looks at her with a mixture of regret and honesty. I suspected, but I didn't know they would move now. Not this quickly. The chamber lights flicker once more. White, then red, then white. Then, a sound reverberates through the chamber door. Boom. Not an explosion. A controlled breach test. Checking structural integrity. Testing for entry. The masked leader's team shifts defensively, creating a protective formation. The stranger moves closer to Nova, instinctively aligning himself with her and Callum. Keen whispers, "Can they get through?" Callum turns toward the central cylinder. If the failsafe completes its cycle before they reach this room, the door becomes impenetrable. And if they get here first? Keen asks. Callum looks him in the eye. Then the truth dies here. Nova doesn't flinch. Show me what I have to activate. Callum gestures toward the central cylinder. The original core key is inside, the one Wren tried to destroy. It needs biometric alignment from a founding operative. You're the only one left. Another controlled strike hits the outer door. Boom. Dust drifts down from the ceiling. Keen's voice grows tight. They're testing how much force they need. Callum looks at Nova with an urgency wrapped in calm. Once you activate the original system, the failsafe will lock, and the data will be preserved. But there's something else. Nova waits. You'll also trigger a broadcast. Keen looks startled. Broadcast to what? Callum answers. To every oversight channel still connected to the old intelligence grid. The truth Wren hid will surface everywhere at once. Nova processes this quickly. A full disclosure protocol. Callum nods. Unstoppable once it begins. The masked leader stares at him. You're talking about dismantling everything we were built to protect. Callum meets his gaze. You weren't built to protect the country. You were built to protect someone's fear. Another hit against the door. Boom. The lights flicker. Nova steps toward the cylinder. Tell me what to do. Callum approaches her, closer than he has been since emerging from the staircase. He doesn't touch her. He simply stands beside her, eyes steady. Place your hand on the panel, he says softly. The system remembers you. Nova raises her hand, but before she touches the panel, the chamber door emits a long, low siren. Not an alarm, a warning. They are seconds from breach. Callum looks at her. Nova, now. She presses her hand to the panel, and the core comes alive. The moment Nova's hand touches the biometric panel, the Origin core reacts as if it has been waiting 8 years for that single contact. A beam of white light sweeps upward through the cylinder, illuminating shelves of dormant hardware now flickering back to life. Lines of code, old, raw, foundational, pulse across the glass walls like veins lighting inside a machine that remembers how to breathe. The ground hum deepens into a steady vibration. Director Keen covers his eyes from the sudden brightness. This is more power than anything we've ever run in Ravenwood. The masked leader steps back, stunned. "Vance, what did you build?" Callum doesn't answer immediately. He watches the light crawl up the cylinder, his expression a mixture of relief and pain. "We built a system that learns truth from patterns, one that sees discrepancies, one that knows when data has been altered." The hum grows louder. The chamber lights realign into a circular pattern around the ceiling. The core is fully awake. Nova doesn't look away from the cylinder. "Callum, this system isn't just defensive, is it?" He breathes out slowly. "No. It was designed to validate integrity, to ensure no one could rewrite what happened." Keen steps toward the central console. "Then once the broadcast begins, every hidden file, every falsified directive, every suppressed report, every off-record action," Callum finishes, "will surface." Another metallic thud hits the external chamber door. Harder this time. Dust shivers off the ceiling. The third faction is close. The stranger, Callum's survivor, moves toward the entrance instinctively. "We won't have long." The masked leader steps beside him. "If they breach while the system is broadcasting, they'll destroy the core," Keen says. Callum shakes his head. "They'll try, but once the cycle begins, the core can't be shut down from inside the chamber." "And from outside?" Nova asks. Callum responds with a heaviness that tells her the truth before he even speaks. "They'll try to collapse the whole facility." The masked leader stiffens. "You're saying they'll bury all of us?" Callum's voice is steady. "They're following an old doctrine. Eliminate the source. Eliminate the problem." Another strike against the outer door, this time accompanied by a faint hiss. Keen's eyes widen. Cutting tools. They're slicing through the lock. Nova turns sharply toward Callum. "How long until the broadcast begins?" Callum glances at the cylinder. "The core is compiling the data. It could take minutes or 30 seconds. It depends on how corrupted the auxiliary files were." Another strike. The chamber door groans. A thin line of red sparks sprays inward for a brief second. Nova speaks quickly. "Callum, how did the third faction get operational again if the secretary is dead?" Callum's answer is calm. "People don't disappear just because their leader does. They reorganize. They reinterpret the mission." A beat. "And they fear the truth more deeply than they fear the enemy." The masked leader lowers his voice. "We were their front line. We never even knew it." Callum meets his eyes. "Now you understand why I hid the survivors. If they knew anyone from our team lived, your network would have hunted them down." The core emits a sudden tone, sharp, rising. Nova faces the cylinder again. "What does that mean?" Callum takes a step forward, eyes locked on the cascading lights. "It means the system has found a match." Keen frowns. "A match for what?" Callum answers quietly. "A match for the altered data." On the screen, a symbol appears. Not the triangle, not a name, not a document. A code, a clearance signature. Nova's eyes narrow. That's an oversight identifier." Keen inhales sharply. "Not possible. That clearance belonged to... Callum interrupts gently. "Yes, the former secretary." The masked leader's voice is low. "But he's dead." Callum looks from one face to another. "He may be dead, but someone else is using his clearance." Nova's jaw sets, "Meaning someone in the current chain of command inherited his access." Another loud metallic boom against the outside door snaps all eyes toward the entrance. The cutting torch flares again. The lock glows red. Keen steps back. "They're seconds away." The core emits another tone, louder, more urgent. Callum looks at Nova. "It's ready. Activate the broadcast." "How?" she asks. He steps closer. "You already started it. Now you give it authorization to send." Nova turns toward the panel, but freezes. The stranger says quietly, "Listen." Footsteps. Not from above. From behind the chamber door. They've cut through. They're coming in. Callum steps behind Nova, voice low and steady. Nova, no matter what happens next, press that panel. The masked leaders team forms a defensive line. The stranger joins them, breathing steady, resolve clear. Keen backs away from the door. They're breaching! The lock sparks. The door shifts, and Nova reaches for the final authorization panel. As the chamber door explodes inward, flooding the room with smoke and silhouettes of the third faction. The chamber erupts into motion the moment the blast wave clears. Smoke rolls across the floor in a low, expanding cloud, mixing with white light from the core and the sharp red flare of breach tools. But Nova Hale doesn't flinch. She doesn't step back. She doesn't break focus. Her hand remains inches from the authorization panel. Callum Vance stands behind her, steady, silent, prepared. And the third faction enters. Figures in matte grey tactical suits sweep through the smoke, coordinated and silent. Their visors shift through scanning modes, searching for threats, mapping the room. Their movement is fast but clean. No shouting, no hesitation, no wasted steps. Director Keen shields his eyes from the glare. Nova, do it now! The masked leaders team moves as a single unit, forming a protective line. They're outnumbered, but they're trained, and determined not to surrender the chamber. The stranger, the survivor who followed Callum, steps in front of Nova without thinking, stance tense, breathing steady. You don't get to erase us again. But the gray-suited commander raises one gloved hand, not in a strike, but in a silent order to hold position. Then he speaks. We're not here to kill anyone. The words cut through the chamber like a sudden shift in gravity. Keen stares. Then why breach a level black archive? The commander's visor tilts toward the core. To stop the broadcast. Callum steps forward, placing himself just slightly ahead of Nova, like he used to during field operations years ago. It's too late. The commander's tone remains calm. It doesn't have to be. The information inside this core can destabilize intelligence networks across the globe. You don't understand the consequences. Nova finally speaks, voice low, firm, unshaken. No, you don't understand the consequences of burying the truth. The commander turns toward her, as if genuinely measuring her conviction. Agent Hale, your loyalty is not in question. But some truths aren't yours to hide. Nova cuts in. A brief silence follows, not tense, not explosive, measured. The commander's voice softens. This isn't about loyalty. It's about stability. Callum answers first. Stability built on deception collapses the moment someone questions it. Nova adds, and the right people are starting to ask the right questions. Another pulse of red light crosses the cylinder. The hum intensifies. Lines of code spiral across the display. Keen looks at the core. It's aligning. Seconds left. The commander's attention snaps toward the panel beneath Nova's hand. I won't let you activate that broadcast. He steps forward. But so does Callum. And the two men stop inches apart. The commander lowers his voice. If you do this, you'll ignite hearings, investigations, resignations. Callum's reply is soft but immovable. Then let them happen. The commander's jaw tightens under the mask. You're risking the entire structure of intelligence oversight. Nova speaks again, quietly but with absolute clarity. We're saving it. The chamber trembles. The core emits a rising tone, higher, urgent, signaling final readiness. Keen steps back instinctively. That's it. The window is closing. The masked leaders team tightens formation. The stranger shifts his stance, ready but calm. Even the third faction freezes. Not attacking, not retreating, waiting to see what Nova will choose. Nova lifts her hand 1 inch higher, and the commander tries one final time. Agent Hale, if you press that panel, everything changes. She meets his gaze through the mask. Not angry, not emotional. Certain. It already has. and she presses the panel. The reaction is instant. White light floods the cylinder. The ground hums like a resonant chord. A shockwave of data ripples through the chamber. Clean, controlled, powerful. Not destructive. Revealing. The broadcast begins. Across every hidden oversight line, every sealed archive, every encrypted channel still connected to the old grid, truth releases itself into the network. Callum closes his eyes. Not in exhaustion, not in triumph, but in relief. The kind of relief someone feels only after carrying a burden far too long. Keen exhales sharply, overwhelmed by the scale of what's happening. It's done. The masked leader looks at his team, then at Callum and Nova. Everything we were built to hide is now out. The commander of the third faction lowers his weapon, slowly, deliberately. There's no stopping the broadcast now. Nova turns toward him. Then help us deal with what comes next. The commander hesitates, then nods. A small, precise movement. A surrender not of power, but of secrecy. Callum steps beside Nova. Not touching her, but close enough that the weight of 8 years hangs between them. You did it, he says quietly. Nova shakes her head. We did it. The core's lights begin to dim, now that the broadcast is complete. The energy settles. The hum softens into silence. The chamber door stands open. No longer a barrier, just a threshold. Keen looks towards the staircase. The world outside this room just changed. Nova nods once. Then let's go meet it. Callum gives a faint, tired smile. Together? Nova turns toward him, and for the first time in the entire story, her expression softens. Together. They walk upward. Keen, the masked leader, the stranger, the commander, Callum. Not as enemies, not as factions, but as witnesses to a truth finally brought into the light. Behind them, the core powers down. Its final message sent. The past is no longer buried. And the future is no longer controlled by shadows. The world will ask questions. The world will demand answers. And Nova Hale is ready to give them.